Chapter 2. He knew that when he reached the edge of town, the sight of his great waddling frame was guaranteed to bring out the worst in the local kids, and so it did. In no time at all he was surrounded by half a dozen of the little scuttling snot-nosed buggers, their insults falling thick and fast on his ears as they danced around him, taunting and jeering, but always keeping just out of reach of his huge arms. The last thing they needed was a bear hook from Fatso. Hell, the stink alone could kill you. His first stop, as usual, was to purchase a quart of his favourite Oblivion juice from the liquor store. Mr. Benetti, the storekeeper, always had a bottle wrapped and ready to eliminate the chance of Bronevski remaining in his store any longer than was absolutely necessary. He invariably served him at arm's length, and when he took the money, the grimace on his face showed clearly that the desire to wash his hands was instant and powerful, as was the sensation that he was about to throw up. When Bronevski waddled from the store, he heard the hiss of the air freshener behind him, and the thought of making Mr. Benetti waste money on scented sprays made his lip curl upwards in a kind of twisted smile. The kids were waiting for him when he reappeared, and the chanting abuse was resumed with all its usual venom. One shiny-faced kid in particular caught his eye. He was new to the bunch and seemed to be trying to ingratiate himself into the local gang by being especially foul-mouthed. Bronevski sniffed deeply, bringing a huge wad of sticky phlegm into his mouth, and after chewing it into the perfect shape, took careful aim and spat it out with tremendous force into the boy's upturned face. Now it was the turn of the new kid to feel the wrath of the gang, as they turned on the spit-smeared child and chased him down the street. Again Bronevski's lip curled. He was having a good day. Next stop was a grocery and newspaper store to pay his paper bill. For all his faults, he never forgot to pay his paper bill, and at least he could rely on a civil word from Mr. Henderson. Henderson was old beyond retirement, but like a lot of old people, the thought of retiring never entered his head, not whilst he still had the ability to cope and the good health to carry on. Mr. Henderson's eyesight was none too good, but his spectacles compensated for that, and, fortunately for him, his sense of smell was nil. As far as he was concerned, Mr. Bronevski was just another customer, and a darn good payer at that. As the two men exchanged pleasantries, the door was heard to open and close at the far end of the store, followed by the sound of footsteps that suddenly halted as a useful voice spoke from behind Bronevski's shoulder. "Hey, Fatso, how are you doing, you stinking pile of shit?" The delivery boy ducked behind the counter out of Bronevski's reach. Bronevski ignored the youth. "I'll take a breakfast cereal." He reached out his huge hand, took a pack of cornflakes, and stuffed them into his brown shopping bag. The kids watched his every move. "How'd you get so fat off breakfast cereal, blubberbus?" "Hold your mouth, kid," said Mr. Henderson. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bronevski. You know kids today, no respect." "Another grifter?" Bronevski asked. "They come and they go," Mr. Henderson shrugged his shoulders in resignation. "Reform school dropouts, bums on the make. They think because I'm an old man I don't know from nothing, but I know," he added conspiratorially. "Believe me, I know, Mr. Bronevski." He leaned over the counter nearer to Bronevski. "Drugs. They use the money for drugs. Pills, hashish, you know the kind of stuff. Does the brains in, but what the hell, who can tell? I put up with them because they're cheap labour, but I never let them near the money. No, sir." "Very wise," Bronevski changed the subject. "You got something in the freezer, Mr. Henderson?" Here was a real turn of events. Bronevski hardly ever purchased anything but other than cereal from the store. "You got company coming, Mr. Bronevski?" Henderson asked as he shuffled out from behind the counter and headed for the freezer. "My nieces." He followed close behind the storekeeper. "They're my cousin's kids, twins Kate and Nina. Didn't I mention them before?" "No, sir, never before. I thought you were like me, all alone in this world, Mr. Bronevski." Henderson opened the freezer door for Bronevski to take a look inside. "What do you think they're like?" "Meat. They just love meat, Mr. Henderson." He delved around among the packages and produced 6 huge steaks, all in all 12 pounds of meat. £2, Mr. Bronevski, that's going to cost a lot of dough, you know. Those nieces of yours sure must have some appetite. Like I said, Mr. Henderson, they love meat. He took a huge billfold from his pocket, ran his fingers through the $1,000 bills, and eventually found $100 to pay for the goods. Although looking at them, you would never guess. Both as thin as reeds. I must admit I worry that they're eating enough. But that's the way with young ladies these days, Mr. Henderson. No meat on them. No meat at all. Down the far end of the store, the kid watched every move. The sight of the wad in Bronevski's fist made his mouth water. When he heard the mention of girls too, it was like hitting the jackpot. The boy just couldn't help butting into the conversation. How old are these nieces of yours, Mr. Bronevski? Bronevski paused and looked the kid up and down. Oh, it's Mr. Bronevski now, is it? So what happened to Fatso? Well, you know how it is, Mr. Bronevski, just funny like all the kids. Just funny, is it? So did I call you stupid, ugly, ignorant? Would you think I was just funning then? I'm sorry, Mr. Bronevski, it's just the way I am. It's not my fault, you know. Nobody ever gave me a chance. The kid stared at his shoes as though looking for inspiration. Nobody, Mr. Bronevski. So long, Mr. Henderson. Bronevski walked from the store and headed home with the kid trailing behind him. After a few yards, he stopped and turned to face the boy. You want something? The kid shuffled his feet. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for calling you Fatso. Bronevski stood looking at the boy for a few moments. After a while he asked, What's your name, boy? I can't keep calling you boy. The boy seemed to brighten up a little. It's Billy, Mr. Bronevski. Billy Lapowitz. Billy Lapowitz, huh? That a Polish name, Billy? You like me, a dirty Polak? Imagine that. All this time I think you're just another piece of shit, and you're not. You're a Polak piece of shit. Hey, Billy Lapowitz, it's a small world, ain't it? I guess I deserve that, Mr. Bronevski. I guess you do, Billy. So anything else to say, Billy? You see, I gotta get home, you know. Can't stand here enjoying with you all day. Well, now you come to mention it, Mr. Bronevski, there was something I wanted to ask. Bronevski already knew what was on the kid's mind. Don't tell me, Billy. You want to know about my nieces. You want to know because you think you may just be the knight in shining armour they've been waiting for all these years. Well, I just thought... Billy boy, you don't think. Thinking ain't a good department for you. Bronevski put his hand into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. In his fingers were 2 photographs, both of which he held out towards the boy. Take a look, Billy. These young ladies have seen it all, done it all. What on earth makes you imagine that you, of all people, could interest them? The kid stared in disbelief at the 2 young ladies. The picture quality made it obvious that they were professionally posed and in a topless studio shoot. Mr. Bronevski, what can I say? They're beautiful, just, well, beautiful. In their line of business it helps to be beautiful. They're photographic models. You heard of photographic models, Billy? Sure I have, Mr. Bronevski. Seen them too, you know, in those titty magazines. Put your pecker away, Billy. He took the photographs back and slipped them in his pocket. Tell you what, kid, I'll give you a chance. You said nobody ever gave you a chance, so I'll be generous. Do you think you could behave yourself for an hour or two? What did you have in mind? Well, to tell you the truth, I enjoy the company of my nieces, but they're very young. Like you, they soon get bored. If I invited you over to dinner tonight, maybe ask you to bring one of your buddies along to keep the girls company, could I trust you? He could not believe his luck. Sure you could, Mr. Bronevski, and thanks for the chance. I won't let you down. Just remember, keep it zipped away. I find you touched them, you're in trouble. Hey, Mr. Bronevski, it never entered my head. You freaking liar. One more thing, boy. I don't want you bringing any of that shit you're always smoking. And forget the pills. You're stupid enough without that stuff. I know the girls like to indulge in that kind of thing, but that's up to them. If they want to share what they have with the 2 of you, well, that's up to them too. Just don't bring any of your own. Deal? Deal, Mr. Bronevski. Okay, I hope you don't let me down. See you at 8 tonight. I'll be there, Mr. Bronevski. Right, now get home, clean yourself up a bit. You look like shit. See you next week.